Once upon a time, in the middle of the eastern half of the world, there was a country called Iran. Iran was once ruled by the Pahlavi dynasty, with the last of them being this guy, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. The final Shah came into power after England and the USSR invaded and forced his father to abdicate during World War II. By the mid-70s, the Shah was hated by a lot of people. He was a corrupt, autocratic leader who used violence to suppress his opposition and ignored public criticism. As if that wasn't enough, the Shah also showed great disregard for Islam and its traditions, which isn't a terribly good idea when the majority of your country is Muslim. He did things like organizing celebrations with drinks forbidden under Islamic law and changing the Iranian calendar from Islamic to royalist, something that outraged the Iranian Muslims. The growing poverty amongst the Iranian population was also a pretty big issue. Unfortunately for the Shah, the Iranian people weren't pleased at all with any of the issues surrounding them, and by October 1977, they'd had enough. The Shah's disregard for Islam, the growing poverty amongst the Iranian people, and the government's poor leadership all came together to form a recipe for revolution. As a result, Islamic students and religious leaders began furiously protesting against the Shah's reign. In 1979, the Shah was booted out of the country by his opposition, and this guy, Ayatollah Khomeini, returned to the country to take power as undisputed leader after 15 years of exile due to his opposition to the Shah. At this point, the Iranians were pretty happy. The Shah was gone, Iran was an Islamic republic, and Khomeini was back in the country as leader. But what happened to the nations around Iran? The revolution sparked great excitement amongst many Muslims and strengthened their opposition against the West. It even caused Islamic insurgencies in numerous countries throughout the Middle East and Northern Africa. In Lebanon, the insurgency grew into a political and militant group called the Hezbollah, which is supported by Iran. The Hezbollah is considered by many as a terrorist organization. It has been involved in terror operations throughout the Middle East and has had a long-standing conflict with Israel. In 1980, an 8-year-long war broke out between Iraq and Iran, becoming the longest war of the 20th century. Iraq was concerned that an Islamic insurgency would rise within its borders, as had happened in other nations, for example Lebanon, and wanted to suppress the source of the threat. Iraq was also keen to get its hands on Kazakhstan, an area rich in oil, which was located just within the Iranian border. Iraq decided to take advantage of Iran's confusion and disorder with a revolutionary government and make a play for Kazakhstan. The chaos that Iran experienced after the revolution also contributed to the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. While Iran was trying to get things together, Afghanistan was experiencing its own political issues. The old government had been overthrown by communist groups, and the country was now being controlled by two separate communist parties. These parties were not very popular at all, especially amongst the Muslim population in Afghanistan. And with Iran otherwise preoccupied, the Soviets decided to invade Afghanistan in an attempt to strengthen the new government and crush the rising insurgencies throughout the country. All of the immediate effects of the Iranian Revolution have had a much larger and longer-lasting impact on the world. For example, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan led to the rise of the Taliban and the current Afghanistan war. The Hezbollah are currently involved with the Syrian civil war, and Iraq and Iran were still trading prisoners of war until 2003. Seeing these impacts of the revolution leaves the question, how will the revolution impact the future?